I'm calling our pre-budget work session to order. The first item of business is we've got a few excused absences. So the mayor, council member Lambert Melton, and Mayor Pro Tem Harrison are all absent and excused today. Today's meeting, we will have presentations from the parking enterprise, the stormwater enterprise, and the Raleigh water enterprise. And with that, I will call up Caitlin Parker from Transportation, who I think is already ready.
I'm here. All righty. Good afternoon. My name is Caitlin Parker. Is the mic on? Hello? Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Caitlin Parker, and I'm the parking manager. Today, I will be reviewing the state of the parking enterprise. So, quick agenda. We're going to review the off-street, then the on-street, and then we'll go into program considerations. So, quick timeline of the parking division and our key milestones from 1984 until the present. I want to draw your attention to two key milestones. First, in 2013, we increased the rate for on-street just in the Fayetteville zone. And then 2018, we increased rates for off-street and on-street as a whole. That was the last time we were back at council for rate changes. So our off-street review. This is a timeline of when our garages have been constructed. I want to point out two things. First, in 2030, we lose the land lease for the Cabarrus garage. This means that in 2030, we lose the rights to the structure and the landowner absorbs the rights of that structure. Then in 2035, our lease expires at the Blunt Street garage. So currently, we have a little over 7,900 spaces in our off-street inventory. However, 55% of those are contracted. So that means we have a legal contract with the entity for X amount of spaces in a garage. An example of that would be in the City Center garage. We currently have about 550 spaces contracted with Red Hat, but at any given time, they can go up to 1,200. Another example would be we have about 200 garage spaces contracted in the Convention Center garage with the Marriott. So this is a quick review of our rate structure for our current garages. You can see out of all of our garages, we have about 4 different structures. I want to highlight that first row. It includes about 5 of our garages, and that's about 60% of our off-street inventory, and those are your 2-hour free garages. Also, Blunt Street is not accessible to us 7 p to 7 a daily, plus on weekends. So how do we compare to other cities? This is a benchmark against 8 other enterprise funds across the nation. And as you can see, we are below some in hourly rates and below others in daily max. I also want to highlight that I used our highest rate here for Raleigh, which is $3, which is only in performing arts and convention center. We're at a lower rate for our other garages. So how are we comparing to our private industry? I do apologize, I know the icons are a little small, but these are 4 private lot or garages within about a block radius of a city-owned asset. So if you look to that red diamond, that is a private lot right next to our Wilmington Street garage, and it's usually full. Their daily max is about $42, and their first hour is at $6.65. Then I want to bring your attention to the green diamond. That's about a block from our city hall. That is a private garage. Their daily max is $24, and the first hour starts at $8. I also want to note that North Hills already has paid parking, and that Ironworks and the Village District are rumored to be moving to paid parking. So we have a few programs within the off-street program. We have our small business parking program, the 2-hour free program, the electric vehicle charging program, and then our downtown evening program. Currently, those 4 programs combined do have about a $1.3 million impact to the enterprise. These are our 3 major contractual services for off-street. The first is the car park, which manages our daily services in all the garages. That number you see to the right will be the new contract amount in July. I will say that does include additional janitorial services, plus the addition of the gate system at Wilmington. Currently, all of our garages have that brand new SCADATA gate system except for Wilmington. Then we have our Downtown Raleigh Alliance, and they provide safety and security. And then SCADATA. So again, that's our parking access revenue control system. That was a $3.5 million install, and then we have a $98,000 annual cost associated with that system. So off-street revenue from FY18 to FY25. As you can see, we did get impacted by COVID, but we've slowly been trending back up towards FY18 numbers. However, expenses have increased since FY18. So how does each garage compare from FY18 to FY25? I know it's a little busy, but you can kind of see how they've been performing. As you can see, most of them were impacted by COVID, but again, we are trending upward. I want to highlight that City Center and Convention Center are higher due to those contracts that I spoke about earlier. So you remember the timeline, around 2007, the city was building a lot of garages for economic development. However, we still have about $36 million in debt service tied to these 3 garages. So I've talked a lot about revenue, but what about the costs of maintaining our garages? In 2021, Kimley Horn did an assessment of all of our garages and identified $10.4 million in capital costs. For example, waterproofing the roof of City Hall. We have not been able to act on these yet, and so we now estimate it would cost us about $13.5 million. So those are our identified capital costs. Then we're going to move into operational maintenance. This is our industry range for what we should be expending in operational maintenance. So low end is about 2.7 million, and then high end is about 3.9. So again, that's what we should be spending on operational maintenance. So we'll jump in now to the on-street. We have about 280 meters, over 1,800 meter spaces, 3,400 plus unmetered time-controlled spaces. In FY25, we completed 1.1 million meter transactions. 56% of those were done by mobile payment. So these are our current rates. We're at $125 for most of our spaces, and we charge 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. However, then in like the Hillsborough, Fayetteville Street area, we're at $1.50, and those hours are 8 a to 8 p. Monday through Friday. Again, how do we compare to other cities? I also want to note here, we are the lowest, but also that $1.50 rate, only 32% of our spaces are at that rate. 68% of our spaces are at the $1.25 rate. So these are some programs in on-street. The residential parking permit, our handicap violations revenue does go to Wake County School System and streeteries. However, parking realizes the support that these programs do to other policy initiatives, so we are glad to support them. I also want to highlight that iAccess. We were the first city in the nation to adopt this program, and since June, when we went live with it, we received over 170 surveys from the ADA community about how we can improve ADA spaces, and we've been slowly making some work on their feedback. So within on-street, these are our 2 major contractual services. The first being Passport Mobile, so that's how we pay for our meter transactions. And the second one is our biggest, which is Passport Enforcement. And that's basically our management platform for all on-street operations. So permit, citation, appeals, statuses, letters out, that's what that contract covers. So here's on-street revenue from FY18 to FY25. Again, COVID did impact us, but you can see from FY21, we've been trending upward. Now, revenue is consisting of citation revenue, meter revenue, and permits revenue. And then the blue line is our expenditures throughout the year. And so you will see on-street, our revenue does outpace our expenses. And so parking sees this as there's been more activity downtown or in these areas, whether it be for our meter revenue increasing or our citation revenue, because usually more people means more rules not being followed. So that was a lot for on-street and off-street review. I'm going to move into our program considerations. And I have a handout for y'all that will help with the rate increase. So I want to go back to 2018 when parking was last in front of council for rate review. Back in 2018, we approved phase 1, which was implemented in fall of 2019. So that's where we're currently at. However, in 2018, we approved phase 2, but as you can see, it was supposed to be implemented in fall 2020, but that's when COVID occurred. So parking was never able to move forward with phase 2. So again, back in 2018, though, we were considering to go to 140 for monthly. We were talking about reviewing Saturdays on street, and we were talking about going to $2 on the meters.
Just to be clear, council approved these phases. Phase 2 was just not implemented due to the pandemic.
Correct.
Okay.
So this is parking's current ecosystem. Due to our current pricing strategies, we're unbalanced. You ideally want your on-street to be higher in rate and charge more because you want to create a behavior. You want people to go to the garage for that long-term parking. We want that turnover on-street because we don't want our streets to be parking lots for 10, 12-hour shifts, and we want those businesses to get more and more people in front of their business. Also, pricing strategy is not just about revenue. It's about sustainability, which I'll get to in a little bit. But I'm going to talk to a few things about how we can get this scale more balanced. So currently, the total parking program gives away or has parking free 57% of the time. So in a 24/7 time period, all of our parking is averaged 57% free. Meters alone are 70% free of the time. So I talked about it earlier. It's not just about revenue that free parking impacts. There are sustainability trade-offs of free parking. Free parking can lead to increased traffic congestion, increased greenhouse gas emissions, a decrease in our use of transit and micromobility, and an increase in energy consumption. So as you may recall from the retreat, parking has needed the support of the general fund to meet the enterprise needs. So in FY27, we project our revenue at $16.1 million. However, our expenses are projected at $24.1 million. That leaves us a gap of $8 million. So we do have some revenue tools that kind of help address that gap. And today we'll be addressing monthly rate, off-street hours, our hourly rates, and our programs. So there is a path to enterprise independence. Again, these are the tools that I just referred to. So to get to enterprise independence, we would have to increase to 140 monthly. Now remember back those 5 main garages I spoke about and the rate structure. At those garages, we would move to 24/7, eliminate the 2-hour free parking, and increase rates. Then in our other 3 garages, we would increase rates because those garages are already 24/7. Also programs. We would have to eliminate the small business parking program. As a reminder, that has a cap of 400 parkers. Each small business has to have less than 49 employees, and they get up to 10 free parking cards that gives them 24 access to a garage. For on-street, we would need to increase rates to $2.50 and also charge on Saturdays and Sundays. However, we know this is a lot for the enterprise, and we know it's not feasible at this time. So we do have 3 other options to consider. So option 1 is to increase monthly to $135. Again, in those 5 garages, move to 24/6, so Monday through Saturday, increase our rates, and reduce 2-hour free parking to 1-hour free. For those other garages, we would again increase those rates. And then for small business, we would modify the cost. So currently it's $0. We're proposing to modify it to $60, which is the current rate that city employees pay. Then for on-street, we would increase to $250, but keep our existing hours. So this option brings in about $7.2 million in additional revenue. So option 2, only thing that's changing is on row 2 here. So in those garages, it would be 24/6, a rate increase, but keep the 2-hour program. Everything else would stay the same as from option 1, and that's projected to bring in $7.1 million. And then option 3, again, just row 2 changing. So for those garages moving to 24/7, so Monday through Sunday, a rate increase plus keeping the 2-hour. And that option would come in about $7.3 million. So here's a quick summary breaking up each on-street and off-street and what it's projected to bring in. I do want to bring our attention back to that range that I spoke to earlier. $2.7 million for the minimum on our range for off-street, just to maintain it on an annual basis. So, staff recommends option 1, which was that 7.21 that you saw earlier. We are proposing to implement these changes in January 2027, and then for staff to come back in 12 to 18 months to review rates with council. We also want staff to come back on a regular cadence, so we're not in the same scenario where we're coming every 8 years and having to present such big changes. So for our next steps, we would like y'all to direct staff on an option for inclusion in FY27 budget. We as the staff will be completing an RFI for our city-owned garages, and then we will be completing a parking study RFP, which will lead to a parking study.
Are there any questions? Councilmember Silver.
Well, thank you for the presentation. I thought option 2 or 3 was going to pop up. The 1-hour parking, because I believe option 2 and 3 maintain 2-hour free parking, correct? And option 1 is the one that goes from 2 to 1. Yeah, I'm just trying to, and I know DRA is here, I'd love to hear from them. But for someone going out to dinner, 1 hour is not enough. That's just to eat, to walk, to get there, or I'm just a little bit concerned about the 1 hour. What was the rationale? Because the other ones seem to maintain 2 hours and essentially close to what the revenue would be for option 1. So I'm just curious because they seem to be very close. But that was my question. Why the 2 to 1? Because I know it's a huge benefit. And the last time we talked about it, there was a lot of push to maintain the 2 hours. And my other question, so that's the first question, why the option 1? And then, do any of these include, was it weekends as well?
Yeah.
So in each of these options, there would be metered parking on street on Saturday and Sunday. Is that correct?
No.
Oh.
So I can address all 3, I think, really quickly. So for your first question, we wanted to start off halfway between with 2 hour. We understand that it is a benefit to the community, but I think as you've seen with our revenue, it is making a huge impact for us to be able to maintain our garages and make that experience for people coming into our garages. So that was coming in, halfway. Also with that too, to your question about the weekends, right now, we're only suggesting an hour change in the off-street. We're not doing it right now on the on-street option.
Okay.
That was just that, what it would take for us to get to a full enterprise independence. So these options do include either charging for Saturday and or both, Saturday and Sunday in the off-street.
Okay.
Councilmember Branch.
So I'm looking at the packet with the backup information, and this looks to be the cost of other locations within the city from downtown and outside of downtown. Do we have an idea of the usage rate of these other parking lots in comparison to ours?
We don't have the actual data. Some of our private partners don't love to share that with the city. But I will say we've had some good feedback where they're not struggling. They're not seeing a huge decrease. And around, if you look at the Bend, recently they just introduced paid parking, and I still see their parking lot full. And North Hills so far has not reported any issues with their paid parking as well. But no, we don't have full occupancy data for that.
Okay.
To your point, with North Hills, Their parking is free for the first 3 hours, correct?
Yes, there is a slight caveat for that. You have to register in order to get those 3 hours. Technically, they could get you, and if you don't register, it's a $35 fine.
Councilmember Patton?
Yeah, hi. What is the current subsidy from the general fund for this fiscal year?
For this FY26, it was $230,000.
Okay.
Again, that just is some operational. From FY25, it was $2.7 million.
So,
We
sorry,
did.
draw it out for me then. Why did we subsidize 2.7 million a year ago and only 800?
I'm going to call my budget friends up.
All right.
Hello, everyone. Hannah Osborne with Budget. So one of the reasons we lowered it last year is we, as in Budget Office, and Caitlin's position was vacant, did not have the Kinley Horton data in front of us. So we didn't know that we needed to be making these major capital investments of our decks. And so we reduced it and had then cut some expenses. There was also a heavy push to maintain one tax rate last year, and so there was not an opportunity to provide more for them to meet their capital needs of parking.
Okay, so this fiscal year, we're not making capital investments, which is why the subsidy is lower.
Correct.
Okay. And then on this slide that has the gap projection, the one that has the revenue at 16 million and the gap at 8 million, the 24 million in expenses, how much of that is like operational, keeping the lights on, and how much of that is capital investment?
Yeah, so about only 3 million of that is what we would consider capital. That is to potentially address some fire sprinklers in the garages. It's about 20.1, I'm not a math major, to be honest. But just operational, it was about 20.1 before we even added in the 3 million for the capital. And that's just operating. It does not address all of the capital expenses.
I'll have some more, but I can pass the mic for now.
I just had a quick question off of her response. I'm sorry, just a quick question off of your response. And so you said it doesn't include all the capital expenses, just adding sprinkler systems, but what about leaks and all those other types of things? That's not included in that sum, or?
No, that's not included in that sum.
So do you have an idea about how much that would be?
About $13.5 million to address all the leaks and everything. We could do some patchwork with some more operating, but those major works, and again, that was in 2021. So it's been about 4 years of, we might have some other items to address in the garages because of that. But it would take about 13.5 million in capital to right-size some of these repairs.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. At least from my perspective, I do support the rate increases as proposed. I know one was not implemented in 2020, so that was at $2. So I think you're trying to catch up, since now is 2026, 2027, to go up to the 250. So I am open to supporting the increases both on-street and off-street as you proposed. In terms, I know there was a huge policy discussion last year about extending the 2-hour parking, and it's hard for me to make a decision today since that was such an intense debate about potential impacts to downtown businesses, restaurants, and other events, as well as weekends. So that's the part I'm just trying to process. I know you're asking us for an option for council to proceed, but I'm trying to process the implications of going from 2 to 1. And it's hard because I know there was that full debate last year, a lot of people lobbying us. And so that's the part that I'm, when I saw option 1, I was like, oh, thought it was going to be either 2 or 3. So I'm just taking some pause, but certainly want to hear from some of my colleagues. My question is, have you done that analysis or reflect on everything council had shared as well as the public about going from 2 to 1? Yes, it will help revenue, but there could be some other implications. Downtown is now competing with other mixed-use centers, Fenton, Ironworks, North Hills, and yes, they all have different parking arrangements, but, it's a different game today than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so that's the only question I have about, have you looked at the implications, as we discussed last year, of going from 2 hours to 1 hour?
Yes, we have reviewed those, and to your point, North Hills is already charging for the same reason, because when it was free, there wasn't that turnover for them, so it was actually impacting their businesses. Rumor is out there that Ironworks and the Village will be moving to the same model and potentially Fenton as well. So we have thought about that. Again, too, city compared to the private industry, we're still far below, and people are still choosing to park in private lots and pay that money. So we have considered it.
Yeah, I think building on that, I mean, to your point that you made earlier, like we're trying to beget a behavior, which is to get people in our decks and not elsewhere. I think that some of these all feel like a pretty nuclear option to me. I understand this is a challenging set of dials to turn, but I just speaking for the suburban mom demographic that I represent, the weekend free parking is important. I get a lot of good feedback about 2-hour free parking. I think switching both of those dials feels like it is going to beget a behavior change, but perhaps not the one that we're looking for. So that's like an initial reaction. A question I have, I think this was mentioned very quickly in passing at our retreat, but to a point you made earlier, the street side parking is paying for itself, and it's the deck parking that's not. And I think Kennedy made a point that the streams can't cross the funding streams, but I'm wondering if that is our policy or statute or
State statute.
State statute.
Yes.
Got it.
So the on-street has to pay for itself, but the off-street can pay for itself or any other public purpose. But they don't go both ways.
Yeah, that seems silly. Okay.
A question for the city manager. What is the process? Because I know last time there was a full debate, and we were lobbied heavily by those that come to downtown, do business downtown, about the implication, because we had on the table removing the 2-hour parking, and we agreed to extend it. Yes, we recognize there was a cost to that, or a subsidy. So as we give staff direction today, what happens next?
So I think what I'm hearing is there's some potential opportunity to look at option 1, which is what staff is presenting, and maybe a version of maybe option 2. What we would do is price each one and kind of see what that would do. And when we start to have our pre-meetings before we actually present the budget in May, we would lay it at your feet, and then you would give us some final direction depending upon what that number in totality of the entire budget. But just to remind you, our goal is that fees and cost of service actually cover the cost of doing business, so that the taxpayers, whether they participate or not, don't have to ultimately pick up that price of whatever the service is that we deliver from the city. And I think to your comment about the things that we talked about last year, there were 2 things. The other piece of that was the small business program, and trying to make sure that there were some reasonable rates for folks that worked in the service industry. And I think what staff has presented is a model that kind of matches what our employees pay to park in this deck out here that leaks, and they pay to come to work every day too. So I think those were the 2 conversations.
Councilman Branson and Councilman Jones. Yeah. So it says rate increase for off-street for both of these. What is that rate increase? Because I looked through here. Is it to $250 or?
No, so the off-street, so like I said, we have about 4 different pricing structures, so it was a lot to put onto one. So in your handout, we have that table. On the far left, you'll have our current rates for each of those 3 or 4 pricing structures, and then what each option would move it to. On average, it's about a $2, maybe $3 increase, and you're going to see an impact on the daily max. Again, the daily max is 20 or 21, depending on what garage, far below what our private sisters and brothers are doing right next to us. So still far below other rates.
So Has there been conversation to standardize the deck rates? Meaning, is one rate regardless of which city deck you go to?
So there have been that conversation. I think to Patton's point, that was kind of nuclear. We can definitely look into that option though, and moving all city-owned garages to one rate. But that would be, we can look into that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, looking at the two options, I'm really down between 1 and 2, personally. And that's because it still keeps Sunday free, and I know we have churches that really utilize multiple decks that we have. So I know separation church and state, but we have businesses too that also come in on Sundays, and a lot of that is maintenance before they open up, because a lot of businesses still don't open until noon. So I think that will help drive some of that. But again, standardizing the rate, seeing that option of what that price point would be, I think will be helpful for me before I can say let's do away with, not do away with reducing the free hour parking, because I have a feeling where some of these decks are lower, if it comes up and find a balance, it may help us with some of the math. I know it's like moving Legos, and it's not easy, but that's where I stand. If we could look at standardizing our rates that the city owns, so it doesn't matter which deck you go to, the rate is the rate, except for special events, of course.
Thank you so much for this. I wanted to just ask about I know we talked about it before, the possibility of selling decks, and then is there a market for it? I know we talked about it. No, nobody's really buying decks, and I understand that, but I just wanted to uplift that.
Yeah, so that's why we want to do an RFI for the nation. Currently, the local market, we would not get our investment back on these garages. So that's why we do want to look to RFI to see what's out there in the nation on interest on these garages. Also to that point, a lot of this strategy is ensuring that the city can keep some assets. You look at Charlotte, they're completely out of the off-street game, but their off-street prices are significantly higher because it's completely private industry in Charlotte.
Okay, awesome. No, thank you for that. And then the second question I had, in terms of the small business program, that would be definitely affecting their revenue. I mean, it's $60 a month. That's over $700 a year, and our small businesses might not be able to withstand that. Have you had any conversations with them, with DRA? How has their feedback been incorporated into this recommendation?
So we have spoken to DRA some about this. I don't know if we want to invite them up, what you're leaning towards.
Bill King, I think you're up.
Can I, for quick question, while we're doing that, going back to the decks and selling them, 2 of our decks, we lose the lease within the next 10 years. So with us losing that lease, what is the value of the improvements? And how long will those improvements last? Because one ends in 2030, and 2030 will be here before we blink twice.
So do you mean about doing current improvements or?
Correct. Like how much of an investment are we making on decks that in less than 5 years, we're going to lose one of them?
So we do take that in consideration and what we need to maintain these garages for now. So for example, Cabarrus might be the bright and shiny one because we know we might lose it in 5 years, but we're still maintaining it, making it good for public use, and make sure that's structurally sound. But we do think about that. Where are we going to be out in this garage in 5 or 10 years? Okay. Also, Blunt Street is a very complicated, that is a P3.
Yeah.
So it's not just city. So that's a very complicated lease.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Bill King, Downtown Raleigh Alliance. The question on small business parking. We're happy to do a deeper engagement on that. We've done some initial engagement there. For context, so the businesses that qualify, small businesses, storefront level, overwhelmingly service sector, right? So of those employees, most of them are service employees. So that's waiters, dishwashers, even the owners themselves for most of our storefront businesses are not wealthy individuals, right? They're sort of barely making it in many ways. So we've asked some of our small businesses, okay, you've got 10 passes, how many of those would convert to the full monthly rate if that program were to go away? The answer is 0, maybe 1. So you're looking at probably a significant number of people not converting. What they do is they go and they park 5 blocks east. They walk from the neighborhoods because that's where they can park cheaply. Or they play parking meter roulette, and they keep trying to park in the meters and move their car every 2 hours and have to run out of their business, which is pretty disruptive and difficult too. It's a great program. It really saves them a lot of money, to your point. And it's using capacity you've got. You've got capacity in your decks to do it. The roofs of the decks right now have no cars on them. So you've got the capacity. It adds eyes to your deck. It is a tremendous small business program, and it's really aimed at, honestly, a lot of working class employees. So I think you wouldn't have a very high conversion rate if you were to turn the fee back on there fully. I think you do have an administrative challenge where, potentially having a very small fee would allow you to recapture a pass quicker when somebody leaves the job, because obviously they wouldn't want to keep paying $10 a month or something like that. So I think that there could be some wisdom in that, but I would be careful with that fee. Does that make sense?
Can I build on that? What, in your mind, having not studied it deeply or engaged, what is the elasticity point? What is a bartender willing to pay? What's the right?
I think we could study that for you, but I think, you had a nighttime program that was $20 a month. I think I would test something that or below. I think, again, you want something that gets you something they don't want to keep paying every single month, but you're really not going to make a tremendous amount of revenue off that group, and you're saving the small businesses a huge amount. So your ROI for the businesses is a lot bigger than what you're going to get from a revenue perspective, because they're not going to convert, right? So you're not going to convert 303 people into $125 a month. So I'd say it'd be a pretty modest point that I'd look at. We're happy to do that engagement for you guys.
Before you step away, I'm sure you've got some thoughts about the 2-hour free component as well. Might as well share them while you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it. So obviously we've done 2 rounds of engagement for you guys previously on that, plus the round that when you guys were initially looking at the policy. The impact of the policy is very clear, right? So we showed you guys a $3.8 million induced spending that comes from that program that wouldn't happen if not for the program. And if you look at where the decks are, 4 of them are along Wilmington Street. The hardest struggling part of downtown is the part east of Wilmington Street. That is the area that we're focused on and still needs help from a business perspective. So the program has been very impactful there. The targeting is nice of it, and it has changed the paradigm for people coming downtown. You hear that from a lot of people of, I wasn't thinking about it before, now I do come downtown. So I'd strongly encourage keeping that. I think it's been a great program. I think it's been able to get us over a barrier, and that's been really important. I do think, there's a lot in this proposal for you guys to consider. Obviously, the hole that is built has built over years. So it's not staff's fault or your fault or anyone else's. It's built because office workers disappeared in 2020, and they have not come back particularly close to the rate that everything else has come back. It is by far, when we measure it using cell phone data, it is by far the lagging part of our economy as office workers. That is really hard to make up when they were paying you guys $125 a month. If you lose 1,000 of them, you've lost $1.8 million a year, right? That's where your hole is, and it's built up over years. So obviously, you guys are trying to figure out how do we get there and how do we get the decks maintained. So we understand that. I do think there's a lot here. I mean, you've got, right now you guys charge 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. All of these proposals take you to 24 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week. So you're more than doubling your hours extended that you're charging. That is a significant change. You would be looking at, obviously, potential changes to small business, big changes to your street parking as well. And a lot of people use these, so it's touching a lot of different users of parking. And I do think it's a big proposal here with a lot to unpack. So I would encourage looking at this because doubling hours that you're charging, changing all the rates, you're touching pretty much every user of the deck with this proposal. I do think I would just urge some caution here. Much like the federal deficit, in order to make that up, we can't do that in one big swing. It's going to take time to close that. I'd be careful here because parking is really about behavioral economics and the behavior you want to affect, and our businesses will be the one that will feel the impact of this policy. And so I would be careful here with some of these.
Councilmember Patton.
So then also, I'm also thinking about these next steps. So can you tell me again what is in the parking study? Like, what will we be getting when the parking study is complete?
Yeah, so last time we did a parking study was in 2017. That was just a downtown parking environment. We would expand our scope Because I think we all forget parking is not just downtown, it is the entire city of Raleigh. So we would be looking at our curb space throughout the entire city. Rates would be included. We do want to, again, compare to other cities to see if they have free parking and try to find if any cities do that. And then staffing, technology, because there's a lot of technology out there. We just don't have the resources to utilize it right now. So that would include all those recommendations from the parking study. It's a pretty big scope.
Okay. So that sounds like it will take a long time to produce. When do you think that will be back?
So the first step will be the RFP. And then once it could be 18 months, depends on how much time and how much resources we have within the parking staff to get that moving. Also contracted spaces, some of our roofs are empty, but like City Center, as I said, they could snap their thumbs tonight and I've got to have 1,200 spaces for them. So that also would be included, like what our contracts look like for each garage and kind of giving you like a capacity study.
So Councilmember Patton, I think our anticipated timing would be to try and have that study completed by the time that we come back in that 12 to 18 month time range. Essentially what we're trying to set up for is it would be coming back every other budget cycle to kind of reset with where we're at. So, because what we don't want to find ourselves in is that we don't have that regular cadence of touch points with the council in terms of where we're at from a parking standpoint. And then we find ourselves, we're another decade out and we're having this conversation again because we just haven't been looking at it and trying to reset with where we're at over the course of time. So that's really what this is intended to do, is try and set up a cadence of touch points with the council, and that next one would include feedback from that parking study.
Okay. I'm sorry. Just to close that thought, I do think having a regular touch point and not having these kinds of big lags will be helpful for our successors. I am feeling like there's a little bit of like an order of operations thing. Like I had thought other times when we've alluded to parking study that it was going to index like how much parking do peer cities own? Do we own too much parking? If so, like where should we offload? But it sounds like we haven't gotten the study underway, and then we're also going to send out this RFI to see if we can offload some, but we'll be operating not from the results of the study as we explore that.
I would say the parking study will include all of that because you've got to
Okay.
remember we've got 10 decks. We've got, how many surface lots? Well, one active surface lot currently. We know those have become. So the RFI is really, there has been interest locally in some instances, like with our Wilmington Street deck, has come up in the past, potentially Moore Square. So it's really trying to look at that, understanding that as we go through this larger parking study, trying to identify, okay, what percentage of the market makes sense for us to control long-term so that we can really try and keep our pulse on rates and not let them get out of control. And so I think they're really kind of work in tandem at the same time, just trying to understand and glean some information from, is there interest out there in the decks? What does that look like? Certainly some of the information we've gotten more recently with local interest being much at a discounted rate from what it could have been pre-COVID. And so that's, to your point, there's a lot of work that would need to go on over the course of the next 18 months. But certainly I think it's work that's going to be well worth it and will position, as to your point, our successors to be in a much better position.
Yeah. If something comes back though, like there's tons of interest nationally, someone's like, oh yeah, I'll pay $40 million for your parking deck.
Sold.
Sell it right to them. But then we've like twisted all these dials at a direct impact to our bartenders and dishwashers. I'm just worried we might are we working out of order?
So certainly we're not trying to work out of order. I think what we're trying to make sure that we are doing is understanding the state that the parking enterprise is in and how do we try and step it forward,
Incrementally.
understanding that there's a lot of interest in the experience. It's the first thing people see when they come in. It's the last experience they have when they leave downtown. So how do we try and make sure that we're positioning ourselves to not get for that hole to continue to get deeper? The options are not going to get us to that full enterprise stability. And so I think understanding that, we understand that there's difficult decisions. And certainly, Councilmember Silver, to your point with the 1 hour, I think it's understanding there's been tremendous benefits to the businesses of the 2-hour program. There's also been that impact financially to the enterprise. So was there a way for us to kind of find a middle ground there, at least with this initial pass? And I think similarly with some of these other program areas, it's a $600,000 a year impact. Certainly it's tremendously beneficial to our service workers, but we're also trying to balance that against, again, that enterprise and what we're trying to do to make sure that we're really trying to maintain that experience overall.
And I think one of the other things, too, that we're going to be working on, there's often a demand and a request for enhanced services, right? Cleanliness and safety. That comes at a cost. We're not going to be able to continue the state of play where we currently are without an increase. So you're going to get decreased coverage, and that tends to be one of the things that you hear most publicly about from the folks who do business downtown and the people who actually have businesses downtown. So in order for us to elevate that experience from a cleanliness and a safety, a well-lit perspective, that money has to come from somewhere. So that's some of the back of the house negotiations and considerations that were taken in place when we bring forward these recommendations.
Councilmember Jones, Councilmember Rich.
Just a quick question on the parking study. What is the estimated cost for that? And is that incorporated in the numbers, or is that coming from a different bucket?
So we estimate that it could be from $400,000 to $600,000. We do currently have that money covered with some previous capital, so it's just moving forward with that process, but it does take a large amount of money to get that study done. And part of that is because of the size of the scope.
Awesome. And then just a thought, I know we're at that 250. How did you rest on 250, especially since we're so low? Is there an option to do a tiered over a few years so that it goes up to something that can sustain us, maybe a little bit more expensive? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so we got to that 250, going back to that benchmark. Even going to 250, we're still, Durham's already at 250, Wilmington's at 3. So we're just trying to get with other cities. Also, we don't want to be in a place again where we get it approved for $2, but it's another 8 years before we get back for 250. So we're just trying to right size it right now. But that's how we landed on 250.
Right. I guess my thought is, why wouldn't it be just a little bit more expensive, like at 275, if we're seeing this gap? Like, what prevented you from going higher than 250?
Again, it was trying to slowly introduce these to a point. I do recognize that going from $1.50 to a 250 is a jump. So to go any further behind that, so that's why we wanted to make this initial jump, and then maybe come back in 12 to 18 months with this data, with this parking study that might give us more data to say we should actually be at this rate.
Okay, thank you so much.
Maybe we can go to RDU rates. I'm joking. Couple things, just my comments. I'm in favor of a rate increase. I like whole numbers. So I just put that out there. I really believe in standardizing our parking rate across all our decks. Because the amount is so low, and I'm saying this in reference to our overall budget, the $288,000 for our small business. I know how you got there. You took the max of 400, you did 60 per month over 12 months, and that's how you get to the number. But based on our usage, we're only going to get to 218 because we're only at 303 as far as the number of based on what I read, the number of active applications. So we're only going to get to 218. So we're still going to have a gap. So with that, I'm kind of in favor of keeping that program kind of how it is. Definitely, I'm in favor of getting rid of the downtown night program. There's no point in it. I don't think there's need for us to have that program. I also believe in listening to everything, our contracts with our current employers downtown. I like those contracts because they're paying even if they're not using it, but one day they're going to come knocking. So I think we need to be prepared for any changes or adjustments that they may make. And I do agree on the RFI that has a city focus, but also as part of the RFI, let's focus on also some of the behaviors of some of our businesses that have been here before the parking decks and how they're utilizing them to make sure that, we're cognizant and aware of the impact to their mode of operations. And that's all I have, because I could keep going about tiered services like our Raleigh Water that we're getting a presentation on today.
I just wanted to close it out, and I don't know if you need a motion, but certainly it sounds as if we're willing to entertain option one, but have a lot of concerns, I think, in particular about the 2-hour parking, about the small business program, and it sounds like rationalizing all the rates in the deck. So in order to give you some direction, and at that time, we'll have a further conversation about 1 hour versus 2 hour, but we all want to make sure that the enterprise fund, the parking fund, operates at a surplus and not a deficit, so that we can maintain our decks and give the customers the experience they're looking for. So I don't know whether we need a motion or just direction. Just direction. So unless my colleagues have anything different to add, I just know that you need some direction from us today.
Yeah, the things that I'm hearing that I resonate with, so I'll add my thoughts to the direction. I do think standardizing the rates across all the decks. I do think there's probably a little bit more we can press on all the hourly rates, both in the decks and on the street. I'm okay with adding a cost to the small business program, but I am concerned that $60 is too high. So I would be interested in seeing something back, like the impact if it were $20, $25. So that's kind of a set of tweaks that I would like to see.
You got what you need?
I think so, yes. Thank y'all.
So next up is transportation. So we will have Wayne Miles come up from Engineering Services and Stormwater Management to discuss Raleigh Stormwater Enterprise.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. You'll have some sponges coming around consistent with your strategic initiative, which the stormwater team is very excited about, to help Raleigh become more of a sponge city, meaning more resilient to storms, be able to better absorb water and better to bounce back from storms while keeping our public safe. My name is Wayne Miles. I'm the Stormwater Program Manager, and I am very pleased to be here before you to talk about Stormwater's proposed fiscal year 27 budget. Our mission statement is very consistent with the Sponge City concept: to manage stormwater to preserve and protect life, support healthy natural resources, and complement sustainable growth for the community. In short, to be stormwater smart. And that means being smart about how we expend our resources, provide a level of service to the community, and helping our community be smarter about how to understand risks associated with climate change, with flooding events, how to keep themselves and their property safe during those types of events. And it takes a lot of different aspects, as you can see, in the stormwater management program, working together to effectively produce this value. The agenda today, review quickly some past and ongoing work, and then get into our FY27 budget proposal, talking about the CIP and debt service, operational budget summary, and then talk about our proposed rate and fee changes. A quick summary, some of our key programs that are all very popular. First, the Rainwater Rewards Program. Thank you all very much for the support and the policy change. You recently voted to make this a 90% cost share program for helping to fund green stormwater infrastructure throughout the community. This is probably our most popular program and really does help with that resilience in Sponge City theme. Our watershed studies not only help identify and diagnose issues that we are seeing in the community, but helps prioritize the capital improvement projects that go into our CIP. And it's a key aspect of our public engagement. We get a lot of good feedback, specific and general, about the stormwater program as well. We're very proud of our implementing green stormwater infrastructure on city projects. That funding supports all the other city projects in implementing more resilient programs. Construction right next door of the new city hall will have a green terrace and green infrastructure in front in the trees to absorb more stormwater. Gibson Play Plaza had a significant green stormwater infrastructure component to it. And in the photo here is Biltmore Hills, a cistern to capture water, and also additional green stormwater infrastructure associated with that project to infiltrate stormwater. And then the drainage assistance and stream stabilization programs help address smaller flooding, erosion problems on private property. And then the photo that is showing there is also one of our stream workshops where we train the community to how to install better stabilization. And some of our recent training has included quite a few park staff so that we can implement these techniques within the city parks and city projects as well. A few highlights from programs the council has supported in our past budgets. Our floodplain management program is about 3 years old, but very proud of the progress they have made. They were recently, last year, designated a community rating system of 5, which puts us in the top 10% of communities in the entire country. And that gives our community members who have flood insurance through the National Flood Insurance Program a 25% discount on their flood insurance. So direct benefit to the community of having that rating. We also have recently received the official designation that we are a FEMA cooperating technical partner. That agreement is signed. This gives us a lot more control over our floodplain mapping program, whereas previously we relied on the state, and it took 16 years to update the flood maps. We don't believe that's fast enough. So we have a lot more control under this agreement and a lot more autonomy that we can map even in smaller areas that are flood prone and help protect the public even more. Another program councils helped support a couple of years ago is the Green Stormwater Infrastructure Maintenance Crew. We, as I've said, are building a lot more green stormwater infrastructure on city projects. We've got 40 installations specifically on parks and over 100 stormwater control measures throughout the city that we manage. This full-time staff maintains 40 of those GSI devices, as well as supports community engagement. We have partnered with a nonprofit to implement a rain garden apprenticeship program that works with community members and high school students and teachers to teach GSI through a STEM curriculum, science, technology, engineering, and math. So it really integrates that stormwater message into the students' curriculum. Very successful program that we're very proud of. We do still have risks and challenges. Flooding, climate change is real. We're seeing it in the rainfall statistics and in storms that are coming to North Carolina. We have a lot of aging infrastructure, some pipes that are 100+ years old that are still working well for the most part, but we're keeping a close eye on them. And water quality issues that we continue to monitor and that our Green Stormwater Infrastructure Program helps to address. We have, I mentioned our floodplain regulations, but we also have a state-of-the-art flood early warning system that during storms helps us understand where flooding is about to occur and even predict a few days in advance where flooding may occur so that we can prepare operationally as a city and help prepare the community for what may be coming in the near future and help with communications. Our asset management program and capital improvements program helps implement lots of capacity and structural improvements. And as you said, as I've mentioned, our GSI program continues to be very important to our goals. We've shown you a similar graphic before. We've got over $900 million of known capital improvement projects. We're making headway in those. Thanks to the support from council, thanks to our watershed studies, and thanks to our CIP team. We have more progress to make, but as you are aware, we now have debt service capacity to help implement these projects more quickly. That allows us not only to do more work, but to do larger projects in any given year that we can then fund and move into construction. So very happy to have that ability, and we work closely with the finance team and the budget team to implement that within the next year or two. Summary of our major operational budget program categories. Business and finance supports the entire program through account management, contract management, and other business aspects. Development and mitigation, which I'll be talking about a little bit more in a few minutes here. That's our plan review, our development inspections program. Infrastructure and capital improvements implements our entire CIP program. And planning and asset management, along with our GSI crew, does all the condition assessment, risk modeling, and helps implement rehabilitation programs and projects as well. And then finally, we do fund the stormwater maintenance crew. That's in the transportation department. They're the ones that do all of the maintenance, all the street sweeping, the condition assessment of pipes, the flushing of pipes, and also some construction capabilities as well. Here's our proposal for FY27. Right now, our single-family equivalent unit rate is $8.22 per month. That's on the water and sewer bill. We are proposing a 25% per month increase. That's approximately a 3% increase.
Not percent.
I'm sorry, did I say something wrong?
You said percent.
You said percent, 25 cents.
Thank you. 25 cent per month increase, thank you.
Okay.
3% rate change, yes, thank you. That is using our rate model to, is projected to generate about $45 million of revenue for FY27 once implemented. Thank you for catching my mistake. Looking at other cities that we consider peers in North Carolina and other capitals in the Southeast, we are right about in the middle. With the proposed rate change, we would not change significantly in that order. However, we are really very proud of the level of service that we provide for that fee. As highlighted in some of the key programs I mentioned, we believe the community gets a lot of benefit from the programs that we implement. And as a quick reminder, our revenues are based on the amount of impervious surface on each and every property. We believe this is a very good way. It's a surrogate of stormwater impacts. Larger impervious surfaces have larger stormwater impacts, both from a quantity and flooding standpoint as well as a water quality standpoint. So we believe having a fee based on impervious surface is a fair way of implementing the program. So the average median monthly bill under the proposal would be $8.47 per month. Commercial properties, we take aerial photographs, and actually measure the amount of impervious surface from that photograph and then divide it by that unit. So in this commercial property example, this has 21 equivalent units, so they would be billed 21 times the monthly fee. In other words, about $178 per month. And because of the distribution of impervious area across the city, about 2/3 of the paved surfaces and building tops is on commercial property. So as a result, about 2/3 of the revenue that we get is from commercial and about 1/3 is from residential. Here's one change from the last few years of budget presentations that I'd like to go through a little bit more detail, and that's related to our development fees for stormwater. In past history, we have only made modest cost index adjustments to these development fees. And our goal has been and always has been for 100% cost recovery. So we hired a consultant to look at what our cost recovery is now and is projected to be, and it was much lower than we'd hoped. We're below 50% cost recovery, and that's the cost of the staff members, the plan reviewers, the development inspectors, and our goal is to get that back up to where we are 100% or very close to it. We've also benchmarked our development fees with other communities nearby. and we are proposing some changes to the fee. For example, one change is to now propose to charge what we call a stormwater review fee. As we are right now, we only collect fees once we issue a permit. What happens, and this happens more than you might think, we'll get a set of development plans, we will spend time reviewing those plans, and then the project does not move forward, or it may be delayed several years. And so we are not recovering any cost for the time that our staff has spent. So we are proposing a stormwater review fee of $1,500 for projects that require site permitting. So these are larger projects. This is just a little small one-off project, as well as a $50 per acre review fee. And this captures larger commercial projects and large residential subdivisions. And this is comparable to what some of our other local communities are doing. Another change, these are 3 permit fees that we currently have: flood permit, conveyance permit, water supply watershed permit. As you can see on the left-hand side, we charge a base fee for these permits. What we're proposing is a modest change in the base fee, but also adding a per acre fee, per disturbed acre. These larger projects, more complex projects, take more time to review the plans. They take more time to do the inspections. So we believe this will capture more proportionately and fairly the level of effort that it takes for these projects. These other fees that we have in place are much more modest, more similar to the cost indexing that we've done in the past, with one exception, and you can see the green highlighted box on the left, the simple flood study plan review. In our stormwater design manual that we recently updated, we gave the option to do a simpler flood study for smaller projects. But we were still charging the $1,484 to review that, which it doesn't take us as much time to review those simple flood studies. So we're actually proposing to reduce the permit fee for that simple flood study version down to $250. Most of these other fees are modest changes, more like an index change. We have modeled some examples of the impacts to these fees. The top line you can see is our current FY26 fee. Example A is a 2-acre commercial site with 2 acres limits of disturbance, 1 stormwater control measure, and 300 feet of storm drain. Right now, that would be about an $1,800 permit fee. Total fees under the new model would be about $3,650 for that project. And then you can see comparisons to some of the other communities locally under their current permitting fee schedules as well. Example B, a larger single-family subdivision of about 50 acres, 2 stormwater control measures, right now would be about $39,000. Under the proposal, that would go up to about $51,000. Again, in line with the others, maybe a slightly higher, but those are FY26 costs, so we expect that those other communities would be increasing their fees this year as well. We have presented this proposal to the Stormwater Management Advisory Commission just last Thursday, and they did unanimously endorse the proposal that staff is putting forward 9-0. And as always, this enterprise fund proposal will come under final approval with the adoption of the overall FY27 budget as proposed by the city manager. What we would request at this point is, and it will certainly answer any questions if this does seem to be appropriate. As we have done in the past, we will start testing the billing program and, consistent with Raleigh Water's best practice, notifying our largest customers of pending fee increases for their budgeting purposes. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Councilmember Silva.
Thank you, Wayne, for the presentation. Can you go back to the slide on the new fees for the permits? Keep going for the development review. Well, yeah, I guess this one would work. So I know at the previous council meeting, we talked about the need to hire more staff for development services. And just want to know from your perspective, by increasing these fees, would that put more pressure on staff to deliver quicker? Because now, since people are paying and now you believe there's cost recovery, that those that are, whether it's engineers, landscape architects, whomever, will now say, look, now I'm paying a premium. Before it took this long. Now I want either faster or more premium service since I'm paying. Have you talked about that? I mean, clearly it makes sense to do cost recovery, but thought about the other side of the equation is that now that there'll be more of a fee you have to pay, there'll now be a larger expectation that now I want it quicker and faster and not having multiple reviews, even though both parties could cause those additional reviews.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. We do very closely track our on-time permit review, and I'm proud to say over the last couple of years, we've consistently been over 95% on time, and at times it's been more like 97 or 98%. So we're actually not proposing more plan review staff this year. It's really just the cost recovery aspect is what we're looking for here.
Councilmember Briggs?
Definitely thank you for the presentation. How would these review fees increase impact affordable housing projects? And would the money received from the city, especially for the tax credit projects, would that need to be increased to help cover this cost? Or is there a way to figure this out?
And just to clarify, I think you're talking about affordable housing types of projects?
Yeah, because those buildings are considered commercial.
Right, right. So right now, our fees are not any different for any type of housing project. Using stormwater utility and stormwater programs, as an enterprise fund, we have to treat all customers the same. And I may defer if there's any questions on what that means to Madam City Attorney. But there are no breaks in fees for affordable housing or other types of projects. That would have to come from some separate subsidy or somewhere else if there was the desire to do that.
Yeah, so I would just ask that our housing department and other departments that do work, especially planning with our affordable housing projects, just at least have an idea of what these fees, not necessarily the rate increase fee, but I'm talking about the review fees will have on these projects. I went through here in your backup materials, I saw for the school and for commercial property. It's not a big difference, but when we're talking about affordable housing projects, every dollar counts.
Understood. Yes, sir.
Hi, Wayne.
Hi.
I'm looking at two of your slides, and certainly stormwater is a topic that comes up in community quite often. It's a matter of big community interest. So I'm looking at the slide that suggests there's almost $1 billion of known stormwater needs, and it says there's a 25-year delivery at the sort of in the current state of things. And when I offer these things out to community, they say, well, like, how do you make it faster? How can we accomplish that? That's a lot of needs. And I'm speaking only in hypotheticals here, so let me not get misquoted in the paper. When we look at the stormwater fee comparisons, we're right there in the middle of the pack with the other cities. Like, can you describe, if we had rates as high as Charlotte's, would that cut your delivery timeline by half, or what is the answer to the public's questions? Like, how can we make this faster?
Yeah. So it would absolutely increase our delivery. It's not just about money, though. It is about capacity. So, and we are looking at not only increasing our delivery capacity, but different ways of delivering projects. For example, Stormwater is managing the Smoky Hollow project for parks because of the significant stormwater aspects, as well as the stream restoration for the Rocky Branch in Dix Park. Both of those are alternative delivery, CMAR, construction management at risk, which is another delivery method which allows us to deliver larger projects more quickly. We are also looking at design build. We just hired a consultant to be our design build owner's representative to help us look at how to use design build, again, to accelerate project delivery without impacting city staff as much. So a combination of more funding, maybe some more capacity, but also working smarter in terms of how to leverage that funding to deliver projects would be all part of the equation we would have to look at to implement those projects faster and do more of the CIP work.
Thank you, as always, Wayne. Great job. I was wondering, as in our Raleigh Water, we've got the Project Share program, which helps offset those costs for those who are who need. Does Stormwater have anything similar to that, or is that all encompassed under the same program? Does that help your program as well?
It does. Stormwater fees are qualified under the Raleigh Water Customer Assistance Program.
Great. So we do have some assistance for those who need it. Perfect.
Yes, yes. And again, because it's an enterprise fund, as Raleigh Waters is, and Wick can explain this too, that funding has to come separate. They have some separate funding streams, mobile tower revenues and things like that they can use to support that.
Thank you so much.
All right, Wayne, so I heard Councilman Patton say go as far as Charlotte and get the number up. I think I got a room full of witnesses. And I was at on a panel for the National League of Cities, and I used your $900 million as an example on that panel, and I told the folks if they got $900 million that you would greatly appreciate them sending it to Raleigh for you. So I've been out there advocating for you, Wayne.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. All right, now we will have.
Do we need to make a motion on the recommendation? Direction? Okay.
Just direction.
Move forward.
Okay. You got what you need? All right.
We appreciate the support very much.
Yeah. So now we're going to have Whit Wheeler come from Raleigh Water to present the Raleigh Water Enterprise budget.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. Whit Wheeler, Raleigh Water. Thank you for having me here today to present our FY 2027 budget. We want to talk about a few of our accomplishments this year, talk about our operating budget, CIP program, hit the rate model, our rate recommendation, and finally give you an update on the customer assistance program. So for 12 straight years now, the E.M. Johnson Water Treatment Plant has maintained the Director's Award from the Partnership for Safe Water. For 11 straight years, the Dempsey Benton Water Treatment Plant has maintained the President's Award from the Partnership for Safe Water. We've also received the area-wide optimization program for optimum filter performance from the state this year for both plants. And I'm happy to report that our staff have optimized our powder-activated carbon feed system so that we're managing PFAS removal well below EPA's thresholds and well ahead of the required schedule. Okay. As you know, we commissioned our bioenergy and solids reduction project this year. We are currently providing renewable natural gas to over 70 Go Raleigh buses each day. Just 2 weeks ago, we sold our renewable energy credits for $1.27 million with our first time ever online auction. And we have also achieved significant solids reduction, reducing our truckloads of biosolids from 75 per week down to 25 per week. So highly successful. Okay, so both of our sewer maintenance and resource recovery divisions have maintained certifying an ISO 14001, which is tailored around protection of the environment. Happy to announce we are now 20 years in for perfect compliance for wastewater treatment at both Neuse River and the Smith Creek plant in Wake Forest. And our Neuse River Resource Recovery Facility is averaging well below industry standards at 2.9 parts per million of total nitrogen. That is below the limits of technology. Okay, so this year we partnered with Trophy Brewing to launch our Oak City Sparkle. We also partnered with the Great Raleigh Cleanup to remove over 10,000 pounds of litter. We hosted 16 interns from the Community Climate Internship Program, and we graduated 2 water plant operators from the North Carolina Rural Water Association's apprenticeship program. And out in Zebulon, we were able to fully integrate to advanced meter infrastructure, which means we can now read all the meters in Zebulon, 5,500 accounts, over the air. We were able to do that with some antennas on top of the water towers, so kept the cost down. But what that means for us is we no longer have to roll a truck to read the meter or roll a truck when somebody moves out or moves in. Literally going to save thousands of trips a year to Zebulon. Our plan is to move forward in the next couple of years to do that same implementation in Wendell and Knightdale. All right. Our proposed fiscal year 27 budget this year is $391 million. 48% of that represents our operations cost, which are things like personnel, chemicals, energy, materials, equipment, everything that we need to maintain and operate the system. Our debt service, which is for our capital financing, represents about 21% of that budget. And then our pay-go at 31% is where we use cash for capital projects. A few of the budget drivers this year, debt service did increase about $5.7 million. Salaries and benefits went up $3.4 million. And we did increase our pay-go funding to about $3 million. Okay, our 10-year CIP program represents about $2.4 billion. And so, as you might expect, the majority of that, 38%, goes to pipe replacement, renewing that old infrastructure. Closely behind at 30%, water treatment plant improvements, 20% in wastewater and pumping station improvements, and 12% in all others, which are things like software upgrades or facilities maintenance and upgrades. Okay, just a few highlights from our CIP program. In the next 5 years, we expect to spend over $400 million at the M. Johnson Water Treatment Plant. That plant was first built in 1967, so some of this is technology upgrades, but a lot of it is plant expansion. We're going to expand the plant from 86 million gallons per day up to 120 million gallons per day. We're continue to make investments in our infrastructure along the Neuse River, $79 million slotted for the Upper West Neuse Interceptor. And, that piece forms the backbone of our sewer collection system along the river. And then out in Zebulon, the Little Creek Resource Recovery Facility is in need of some upgrades, so we're looking at about $33 million there in the next few years. Okay, going to our rate model. So the way we build out the models, we take the first 7 months of actuals from this fiscal year. We make projections forward. We are also assuming 2% growth in accounts, 1.5% growth in customer accounts, and of course, the model assumes that we're meeting all our financial covenants and debt policies. As you know, this is important when we go to the bond market. Thankfully, we had a very successful sale back in January, thanks to finance helping us with that. So that's one of the important measures here. So this year, what we are proposing for a rate increase, just looking at the 5/8" meter, which is our typical residential customer, would see a 28-cent increase on the base charge. No change to infrastructure or watershed fees, but on Tier 1 would see 11 cent, Tier 2, 18 cent, 24 cent on Tier 3 in irrigation, and 14 cent on non-residential. Flipping to the wastewater side, 30-cent increase on the base charge and an 18-cent increase on the usage. And if you bake all this in, all customers, it's about a 3.5% across the board increase. But I always like to show you how this impacts our median residential customer. So what we're looking at is a 3.1% increase to that 4 CCF median customer. I will mention that last year when we showed you this slide, we had projected 3.7% for fiscal year 27 and 28. The main reason for that move is because we will no longer absorb credit card fees in next fiscal year. So that savings is being passed on in the rate model. Okay, I always like to show how we compare to other utilities in the region, mostly the Triangle area. And you'll notice that Raleigh has moved back a little bit this year. Durham used to be a little behind us, but what you're seeing is that even with this rate increase, our position wouldn't change, and we have very competitive rates in our area. We've had a lot of good, positive things happen recently, and so we're in a good situation. All right, Customer Assistance Program. So this year, we were able to help over 3,300 customers. $659,531 is what was spent in last year. I do want to mention that our median rates continue to be below EPA's threshold for affordability. So we're well below that. In fact, if you just look at the lowest, the 20% quartile, we're still below EPA's metrics. All right. So as typical, our recommendation is that you would authorize us to take the proposed rate increase, program our billing system, and notify our largest customers, same thing Stormwater's doing, and recognizing that the final rate approval would occur with the fiscal year budget. Any questions? Yes.
Thank you so much for this. I just wanted to ask, as we've seen in the news lately, some neighboring counties having some issues with some wastewater capacity and what that's doing to their development potential. And I want to ask, do you have those same fears for Raleigh? And how are you managing that?
Okay, so the way we manage that is through our master planning process. Now, we are a very fast-growing community. Our wastewater treatment plants are in great shape. From time to time, there is pressure on the buried infrastructure, and so we have capital projects that we initiate to try to, stay ahead of that somewhat. When they reach capacity, we have on occasion partnered with developers to move the project up, participating in the costs and so forth. So sometimes they can move faster than we can. So that's always something we use as a tool to keep things moving.
So you don't feel concerned? I know that we're at the lowest of what we charge. And so I just want to make sure that you feel confident that you've been doing an amazing job, and I just want to make sure we're not in that same boat.
No.
In a few years.
This is not, it's not a funding issue as much as it is, we've got over 5,000 miles of pipe. There is some capacity in being able to complete that much work in a short period of time. So we have to be careful and thoughtful about the projects that we're attacking first. Just like Wayne mentioned, we have a current design build project that we're doing with buried infrastructure, and we hope that if we see good results from that, we'll be able to implement that in the future to help move things along.
Great. And lastly, if there is a concern in the future as you're doing these big projects, would that be reflected in the staff review that you would say, hey, this is a concern? How would the public know if they were wanting to be attentive to these rezonings and all of that, the projects? Is that where you would tell us?
Well, typically when a rezoning comes in, there is a requirement for a downstream sewer study. And so that's really how, because especially, we have to make assumptions based on current zoning. And so when you have an up zoning, right, there's more pressure added. And so there's always a study process to look at how that impact happens. So it takes a little bit of time after those things happen. But like I said, we partner with the developers in many cases. Sometimes we'll say, hey, we need this segment upsized, but we're going to go ahead and pay you to upsize it even more to be sure, we don't come back here 10 years from now. So that's one of the tools we use.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely thank you for your work and everything your team is doing. Speaking of expansion and projects in the future, I've been here long enough to know about the Little River Reserve project. Mm-hmm. Where's that stand, and how are we moving with that project?
Okay, so we're currently evaluating that project with a leading alternative, which would be a withdrawal from the Neuse River just upstream of the Neuse River discharge. Those two studies, we're working with the State Division of Water Resources now to move forward with the selected option. I can tell you that, you know, the preliminary cost estimates on those are, I mean, we're looking at $1 billion. So it's those are big projects.
Yeah, I know they're
So
definitely.
we're planning for things. Thankfully, we feel like we've got water to get to 2045, another 20 years, even with a higher growth model. You know, we're always looking at this, you know, cone of probability and to gauge, you know, where we need to be, and we can make adjustments as necessary. But we're studying those now to try to hone in on this will be the next one and go ahead and get the permits in place.
Okay, and let's thank you for that. My question's about what's the time frame of maybe hearing something back, because I won't be probably a use of that because it takes so long, but we're making decisions for our children.
We are.
So as we're making decisions for our children, if you an idea of when that study may be coming to council?
There's another, we just had a meeting. There's some specific technical details that I need the consultant to run on one of the alternatives. So I hope within another 6 months or so, I'll have much better information.
Okay. November 4th is a great day.
It's very, I'm sorry.
November 4th is a great day.
November 4th, okay. All right.
All right. Thank
I will
you.
tell our consultants we got to have it November 4th.
All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Patton.
Yeah. Hi, Whit. Thanks for keeping our water clean. Appreciate that. Questions that I get from, I would say first, I know you're wanting us to give you the thumbs up on this, and which I do. But a question that I get that's in your wheelhouse, that's a great community concern, is that residents watch the water levels at Falls Lake and they see these variety of information. For instance, recently there was a drought notification. It caused a lot of community concern. Are we back on track? I know your office greatly appreciated, provided the information that usually by April 1st, we're back at normal water levels. But so are we back on track? And then also, what's the best place for residents to be looking for information on whether they should become concerned or not?
Yeah, so we have our water shortage response plan. That's posted online. It's available. That response plan has a tiered approach, which is based on 90 years of data, and so it's very statistical on what time of the year it is. So, you know, the drought triggers in March were much lower than they will be in April or so forth. So, you know, we are above 80% water storage in Falls Lake. Lake Benson filled up the last rain. Lake Wheeler's a couple of inches from being full. We hope the rain this week will fill that up. So, you know, we're in good shape. I think the problem with Falls Lake is the upper end is very shallow, and so if the water drops a little bit, it looks very dramatic. But you know, we've got tons of studies that we use to try to monitor that. And one thing that we need to this is good news, that we need to upgrade those drought triggers to reflect, you know, the extra capacity we got in Falls Lake a few years ago. We hadn't actually officially changed that, but it's actually in better shape than it was back then. To answer your question, we probably need to post some things to reference, to explain what I just told you.
Okay.
But I just wanted you to have the full depth of how we came up with those plans. And
Perfect. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, if it's easy for your team to put like a website or somewhere on your existing website that just says like green, we have enough water, fear not, that could be helpful. Okay. And then also you have a slide here that says you're expecting consumption to increase 2%, but accounts to only increase 1.5%. So can you help explain that difference and where's the additional consumption coming from?
Yeah. So the growth in consumption, that's a good question. So 2% growth in consumption has been mostly on water sales that we have. So We are currently selling water to Fuquay-Varina. We're selling water to Johnston County. We're selling water to Franklin County. And so just last year, we took in over $4 million in revenue from those water sales. So that's part of what we're talking about here. We're doing that. They're short-term contracts so that they need water while they develop other water supplies. You probably heard about Fuquay-Varina, some that they're pursuing a new water supply. One of the reasons they're doing that is because the contract with us terminates. So that's been probably the biggest move in usage that we've seen in the last couple of years.
Got it. Okay. I just wanted to highlight for some residents in my area who had some questions about the credit card fees, and I want to highlight what you said and make sure that I understand it so I can communicate it back. We didn't used to absorb that cost. Now we used to absorb that cost. Now we're not. We're passing that along, and in doing so, it is now reduced what we projected for 27 and 28 as to the percentages of that increase. So we're giving the cost savings to residents. I wanted to clarify, is it just for commercial accounts or is it also for residential?
It's everything.
It's everything. All right. So I just want to make sure that's clear. I know some of my residents had asked about that, and I really appreciate you including that in your presentation.
Welcome. What's that? That's what I need. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you for the presentation, and that concludes our meeting. We are adjourned.
Y'all don't get these.